Welcome to the Oneal Perspective, Politics, Power, and Policy, where we break down the latest in politics, dive deep into forces shaping our society, and uncover the policies that will make it all happen. Your host, Curtis Oneal, is here to educate, enlighten, and entertain as we explore the world of politics with clarity and insight. Whether you're a political junkie or just trying to be informed, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Man. But in terms of moving the conversation from immigration now to DEI, and I think that DEI sort of bleeds out of the immigration conversation.
Okay.
So part of the conversation is that when we see this whole push to abolish, to end DEI, a lot of us, communities of color, believe that the DEI push is really about a push to push out African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but we all know that it's not also about African Americans. It's about people with disabilities.
Right.
It's about people that the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm.
Things of that nature. Women.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at those particular types of things, a lot of people believe, especially on the conservative side of the house, they believe that DEI policies favor minorities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it leaves them out of the economic process,
Yep.
or the American dream, so to speak. And what's interesting for me was that when I look at that, the number one group, protected class, if you will, that is benefiting from DEI is white women.
Mm-hmm.
White women are the biggest benefactors of DEI. But when you look at DEI and what the Republicans are saying, there is a underlying fear with regards to DEI. And what I mean by that is there's this fear that that if they don't get a handle on some of these things, that they're going to lose out. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, here right now, it was told in a study, I think the United States Census Bureau, that basically said that in 2045, white Americans will become the minority in this country. A big part of that is that when we look at birth rates in this country currently right now, white women have birth rate, I think that's a replacement rate of somewhere between like 1.6.
Okay.
When you look at Hispanic women, they have a replacement birth rate of 1.9.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you that they're having babies, more so than white women are.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is the case, then for the first time in United States history, white Americans will become the minority in the country that they were always dominant in, as the majority. And so a lot of people believe that this whole DEI push, this whole immigration thing is really about maintaining cultural identity and things of that particular nature. But at the same time, there is concern that especially in the African American community and communities of color, right, that we don't want policies that give us a handout.
Right.
We don't want a handout.
Right.
Now, sometimes we may need a hand up, and I'm okay with a hand up, but we don't need a handout. We are minorities, communities of color are very resilient.
Absolutely.
Very resilient.
Yep.
We sort of been there, done that.
Yep.
And so, it's sort of insulting sometimes on the other side of the DEI conversation that, is DEI basically communicating to other individuals that we need help, that we need government, interaction. And of course, I know we don't need that,
No.
Yeah,
No.
right. But I think DEI policies, if anything, they provide a check and balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I would say DEI, I think it's a noble concept, but the execution and implementation of it is almost put a bad taste on everybody. It's like somebody made a bad cheesecake, and so was spoiled, and so now we don't want nothing to do with it. And whereas I would get asked this question a lot, especially running as a candidate in 2021, and my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on DEI and how would I present DEI as a council person or as this. And I would always bring it back to DEI needs to be embedded in the culture. It can't be a standalone, isolated department like accounting.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just go to one group of people for diversity, equity, inclusion. It should come from the CEO, trickle down to the janitor, trickle down to the office manager, trickle down to human resources. It should
Mm-hmm.
be communicated in our messaging. It should be communicated in how we deal with customers. And so DEI kind of flows through an organization as opposed to being a silo standing alone next to all different departments, especially at the C level.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I had a bad taste with DEI, because it was a straight administrative position or a C level position and C level department. But I felt like everybody across the organization needs DEI, not just the fifth floor of the of our corporate headquarters. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm along the lines of we all move with DEI, and we do it in the way we do our jobs, and the way we
Mm-hmm.
come to work, and the way we interact with everybody. And so I didn't like the execution of it. I do think it's a noble concept to look around, because we do DEI when you're
Mm-hmm.
in places and I say, hey, these aren't contributing in the way. Do we need to make an adjustment? And so we
Right.
naturally do DEI in a lot of spaces, but to have it be locked in and corporate and institutionalized in the way that it was, it made it distasteful. And now you
Mm-hmm.
have two pieces of disinformation or two truths that can be conflicting to people,
Mm-hmm.
whereas scientifically I've seen as well that white women has benefited the most from DEI.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the threat that white men feel like black people is benefiting from DEI. And
Mm-hmm.
so you got people mad at two evils, and it's DEI is probably not working for anybody, to tell the
Mm-hmm.
truth.
Right.
And so it does need to be rethinked. But the language coming out of how they're telling us to rethink it, it creates another level of fear. And
Mm-hmm.
so I am interested to see how this falls and how this plays out, because I've seen certain individuals from Democratic trills or Democratic folks uh, attempt to boycott certain organizations
Mm-hmm.
and move different ways because of this. But I'm waiting to see how the chips fall on D. I have my own opinion about it, but I think it should flow through organizations. I don't think it should be a standalone where we got one person in the office who's the DEI,
Right.
expert.
Right.
I think from everybody top down, how you doing DEI at your position?
Right.
How you
Exactly.
do and that's how we should do it.
Right, right. Well, I'm always curious, especially when these DEI programs and policies. Let's look at the state of Michigan, right? And so you have the state of Michigan. I know within state government there's a DEI program, a big DEI push to ensure that that there is diversity,
Hmm.
equity, inclusion that's there. And again, like I said before, I think you definitely need some of those checks and balances. But I think I would ask the question that many people will ask. Well, how is this program benefiting people of color in these particular programs? Are they looking at applications? Are they looking at names? And they
Hmm.
say they pull a name out that sound like it's an applicant of
Right.
color. Are they measuring? Are they
How are they doing
are
it?
they quotas?
Mhm.
How are we measuring this thing? I was told some time ago that as far as African American men, that DEI is pretty much dead with that of African American men, and part of that was the belief that President Obama had became president, and because he became president, if he can become president as an African American man, there
That's it.
goes the issue with African American men.
We made
Now,
it.
yeah, we
Okay.
made it,
Okay.
and you and I both know that is farthest from the truth.
Absolutely.
That is
Absolutely.
farthest from the truth. And so, but it's those people that are out there that believe that,
Hmm.
that believe that. So that's interesting conversation around DEI.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. It's
Yep.
been a big part of all these organizations, and let's see how they phase in a DEI culture versus a DEI department. That's what I'm hopeful
Right,
for.
right. And I think that's definitely needed, a DEI culture. And so, yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But I definitely believe that there needs to be a systems of checks and balances.
Hmm.
Yep. So, Elvin, I know that we just tackled two big topics around immigration and DEI. And so, podcast family, one of the things I do want to say is that there will be more audio sessions on the whole immigration conversation. I had created 8 sessions around immigration, and so those will be forthcoming sometime soon. But anyway, we did talk about immigration. We talked about DEI. Let's go ahead and talk about some more localized things here that's going on in the state of Michigan. Let's talk about the governor's race, and then after that, we can talk about the city of Lansing. So, it looks like we're looking at an election cycle in 2026
Yep.
for the governor's race. We know that Gretchen Whitmer has been termed out. She won't have an opportunity to run. It'll be quite interesting to see what what she does after her career as a governor. But when we look at some of the candidates, right, and some people are already putting their names in the hat.
Yeah, they are.
I saw that Jocelyn Benson, who's the Secretary of State, has put her name in there. Mike Duggan, I think his name, from the mayor for Detroit, has put his name in there.
Yep.
And what's interesting about him, he put his name in there as an independent.
That is interesting.
So that's another conversation we'll come back and revisit. And then there is I believe his name is Arik Nesbitt, who is a Republican. Republican. I believe he's a House member. I believe he is.
Okay.
And then lastly, I believe there's a fourth one. Oh yeah, Chris Swanson, I believe is his name.
Yeah, you own him.
Yeah. Chris Swanson. He's the sheriff out of Flint.
Yep.
Out of Flint, and so he has some notoriety with what he did in the around the George Floyd take on that. So let's talk a little bit. I'm gonna throw it back to you. What are your
First off, Duggan running as a Democrat is interesting. You know, that's one of Michigan's biggest Democratic cities. That's one of the places where you see in this presidential election we pull the most Democratic votes out of. So it's interesting to see him do that somewhere where he's garnered so much popularity as a Democrat. I think he's trying to rub on the political genie and call it. Looking at some of the trends that he might have seen as far as the elections went, as far as like Tom Barrett's seat. But it's going to be interesting to see. It was an uptick in the number of people who voted for a third party in the state across the board. But as far as selecting a governor as independent, it's going to be interesting. And then it's going to be interesting to see how Democrats combat him siphoning some of the votes away from one of their candidates.
Yeah, and and to your point regarding Mike Duggan, I think he's done a lot for the city of Detroit. I was looking at an article and sort of researching some of the things that he's done, and they said for the first time in Detroit history since 1957, Detroit has positive growth.
Yes.
There's nobody moving from the city. There's people coming to the city.
Yeah. That's incredible.
That's incredible. And as we know, unfortunately, Detroit has a lot of dilapidated houses. There's a lot of blight that's been going on there, abandoned homes, abandoned businesses. And thus far, he's knocked down 17,000 of those, demolished those particular businesses. I think he has in his wish list is 40,000 to knock down 40,000. But a big push of that is not just to knock down buildings, but to put things there, to put resources there, to build new developments, new homes,
now, Detroit
to bring in new business.
Is killing it with the Michigan Central Station comeback. I mean, that was a capstone on redevelopment and what could be done, as far as saving, historically significant places. That was an amazing feat. Coming out of bankruptcy, I mean, Mike Duggan has done a heck of a job as far as the books go in Detroit and as far as the morale go. People in Detroit feel better about living in Detroit since that guy has been mayor.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I saw he's put a lot of money into education programs, job training programs, things of that particular nature. And so I think he is going to be one to watch in this governor's race.
And to see how he campaigns as an independent.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So you touched on it, and so I'm going to try to finish it here. But I think one of the reasons why he's doing that is because of just the state of the Democratic Party right now. All right? We know the Democrats have sort of wrapped their arms around a lot of social projects, a lot of social programs, some that may not feel very comfortable to a lot of mainstream voters, a lot of people that consider themselves common sense voters. And so I think that he doesn't want to be, I guess I don't want to say the word associated, but he wants to be, my thinking is he wants to be a centrist. He wants to be a centrist. He wants to appeal both to the Democrats and he wants to appeal to the Republicans in an effort to garner those votes.
Yep, I think so too, Curtis. I think he's not trying to be beholden to whatever the Democratic platform is going to be for 2026, whatever they're putting together as far as the chair of whatever their policy, priority is going to be. As an independent, he's going to have more free flow opportunity to say what he wants to do.
Right.
And so that may be a motivation for that, as well as the branding that he's trying to get. He's definitely trying to do some new stuff because he could have ran as a Democrat and had his stuff printed ready to go. Now he's going to have to get new print.
Yeah, that's true. Now, this Nesbitt, Republican, I think he's the only Republican that I think that I've seen that has come out for to run on the Republican ticket. But, I've seen him do a couple of things. A lot of it has been around regulation.
Okay.
Trying to get rid of a lot of bureaucratic red tape, things of that particular nature. There's been some funding initiatives that he has sponsored, bills that he has pushed through. But, I don't think it's really anything that's really, at this point in time, that's going to challenge a Duggan. And even
you think Duggan's the hottest contender right now?
He could be. He could be just because he has, run a major city. I think that sort of speaks. And the city has growth opportunity. And also his past political affiliation as a Democrat. And the fact that he is trying to go independent. I think will speak to a lot of voters in Michigan as a common sense vote. But again, I'm interested in see who are some of the Republican candidates that will be coming out. This Sheriff Chris Swanson, I think his name is. I think that he's great in terms of a criminal justice perspective. But in terms of running a city or a state, I think that's a little bit different. And I know that he sort of made a name for himself at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, when he gave his speech, and he did a lot during the George Floyd issues, riots. But I don't think that's going to be enough in an effort to pull off a governorship in Michigan.
Okay. I can see that. I'm interested to see what other Republican candidates come out. I don't know how unified the Republican Party is right now. But I know they had some drama closing out last year in the state of Michigan. And so I would want to see who they rally up against. So it's going to be some time. I'm sure it's going to be some other people to come out.
Right. And that would be interesting to see, who that is, because, I'm surprised that there are no other Republican names on, they're coming out. So that's the conversation around the governor's race. Let's quickly spend a little bit of time on the Lansing Lansing City Council. That's in what, 2025?
Yeah,
November,
coming up. Yeah, it's gonna be a hot one.
It's gonna be a hot one, and I haven't seen right now who's sort of challenging Andy Shore. But I know he's going to run for a third term. And
anybody challenge? Is anybody going to challenge him? I don't
know.
I don't know. I don't know either.
I don't know if he has a stronghold or not. I don't know if there's anybody from the council that wants to sort of challenge him. I don't know what the thoughts are on that, but I do know that there's two seats open. I think what's that? 2 and 4, Ward 2, Ward 4 are currently open.
And at large is open too. Peter.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Spatafor, a couple people are moving on from politics or the local political scene.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. That race is going to be interesting. But I can tell you one of the big things that a lot of Lansing voters are really going to be really concerned about, outside of a lot of the things that we talked about here today, is the economy, right? The growth of Lansing. We want to see this city grow. right now we know the biggest employer in the city of Lansing is the state of Michigan. I think they got 14,000 employees. The state of Michigan does. But we want to see more growth, more opportunity, economic opportunity come here. And I think the other issue is the crime issue, right? What's your take on that?
I think crime is going to be a big issue for voters this year, especially voters where I am in the Fourth Ward, and all across the city. I've seen an uptick in crime just from anecdote from what I see on my social media, what people send to me from cams and stuff, and it's a level of brazenness in the city that I haven't seen since I've been here, and so I think crime and safety is going to be something that's on people's mind this year for sure when they go into the polls.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, so that's interesting. And I think Elvin, we've had a good, robust discussion on a lot of the things that are taking place. By no means are we done with our conversations. We talked a little bit today about immigration. We talked a little bit about DEI, the governor's race, and then of course we closed out with regards to conversation on Lansing. But again, as always, you're always welcome at this table.
Oh man,
you're always welcome, man. Yeah. I look forward to our conversations. On air and off air,
as always,
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be it for today. But one of the things I want to say to the audience is that I want you guys to continue to turn into the Oneal perspective. I want you guys to continue to, if you haven't, subscribe and put a thumbs up on that. But also, I want you to stay informed, stay sharp, and always stay engaged on the Oneal perspective. Thanks so much, people. Appreciate it. Bye.
That's all for today's episode of The Oneal Perspective, Politics, Power, and Policy. I hope you learned something new, got inspired, and maybe had a little fun along the way. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join us next time for more thought-provoking conversations. Until then, stay informed and stay empowered.